This is a story about a guy with a serious mental illness who teams up with a retired security expert to solve a kidnapping. Can they save the girl despite his condition? Let's dive in. The scene unfolds with Simon, the lead character, arriving for a job interview. During the interview, it's revealed that he's been unemployed for 10 months due to his health issues, specifically his mental health struggles. Simon tries to hide his self-harm scars by keeping them concealed in his sleeves. As he attempts to compose himself, he's plagued by taunting voices, including a male voice that teases him, calling him "little girl." Simon's awkward behavior catches the manager's attention, but just as he's about to be judged, a strange man appears, seemingly replacing the manager. Simon's reactions become increasingly erratic, ultimately costing him the job opportunity. The scene shifts to a cafe, where a young boy is caught shoplifting by Ed, the second lead character. Ed cuffs the boy and takes him to the security office, where Jeremy, the security guard, reminds Ed that he's no longer an officer. Ed's rough handling leaves the boy unable to open his eyes after being sprayed with hand sanitizer. Jeremy calls for a female officer to provide first aid, asking Ed to leave. However, Ed follows Jeremy, discussing tubular lock and mentioning its value. At the parking lot, Ed finds his car has been fined for being parked in an employer's spot. The scene cuts back to Simon, who's back home to his sister, Dee Dee, who had encouraged him to attend the job interview that didn't go well. Meanwhile, Ed arrives home and hides his keys in a wall clock. The scene then shifts to Simon's therapy session, where he tells his therapist that he's improving and no longer experiencing visions, a lie that highlights his ongoing psychological struggles. Simon returns home when he hears a girl's desperate cries for help from a nearby street. He watches in horror as a man kidnaps the girl, pushing her into a van. Although Simon sees the man, he can't make out his face clearly. Despite his mental health struggles, Simon wants to save the girl. The taunting voices in his head try to discourage him, reminding him of past failures. However, Simon is triggered into action and chases after the van, managing to note down the van's license plate number, 51N31451, before it speeds away. Ed is enjoying music at home when there's a loud knock at the door. He opens it to find Simon, who introduces himself, but Ed recognizes him as their neighbor. Ed also recalls Simon's notorious past incident where he punched 2 cops, which made headlines. Simon apologizes and asks Ed for a ride, but Ed refuses. Simon tries to explain about witnessing a kidnapping and wanting to go to the police station, but Ed dismisses him and shuts the door without listening. Simon rushes to the police station, but on the way, he's plagued by degrading voices and an unsettling feeling of bugs crawling on his skin, an illusion rooted in his depression. At the station, Simon gives his statement to Detective Glover, describing the girl and the kidnapper, but admits he didn't get a good look at the kidnapper's face. He does provide the van's license plate number. As Simon leaves, Glover asks for his birthday. After Simon departs, she investigates his background and discovers his mental illness, which makes her skeptical about the case's validity. Now, the question remains, was the kidnapping a reality or just Simon's illusion? Only time will tell. Simon is seen in his bedroom checking under the door and bed, haunted by the male voice's taunts about his fears of demons. The voice calls him a little girl, afraid of imaginary threats. Simon then tries to call Detective Glover for a case update, but she brushes him off. It becomes clear that Glover's dismissal is due to Simon's mental illness. Frustrated, Simon hangs up the call. Ed is playing poker on his computer when he receives a call from the clinic checking on his health update. Ed lies about taking his medication and following a proper diet, when in reality he doesn't prioritize his health, throws away his medicine, and abruptly ends the call. A parallel is seen between Simon and Ed, both deceiving their healthcare providers about their health, highlighting their inner struggles. Ed loses the poker game, and just as he's about to focus on his loss, there's another knock at the door. Simon again. This time, Ed invites Simon in. Simon shares his entire story, including the police's dismissal of his case despite providing details. Ed decides to help Simon and asks for the van's license plate number. Simon gives him the number, but it's slightly incorrect. 5-1-N-3-1-4 instead of 5. Ed corrects it and tries to use a website to get information on the vehicle's owner, but a payment issue blocks the process. Then Ed retrieves his keys from a hidden safe in a clock, surprising Simon. They drive to a place where they can look up the license plate information. However, Simon's mental health struggles resurface, and he's plagued by tormenting voices. Overwhelmed, Simon loses control and tries to grab the counter lady's landline phone. Ed takes Simon away from the scene. The incident reaches Detective Glover, adding to her skepticism about Simon's reliability. Ed and Simon head to a street with ladies, where Ed inquires about the kidnapped girl. The lady doesn't know anything, and Ed leaves, believing that if she were lying, her blinking would have given her away. As they discuss further in the car, a group of people suddenly start breaking Ed's car. Simon tries to lock the car for safety, but before he can, a man pulls him out. A woman appears, warning Ed and Simon to stay away from her earners. This seems to be a consequence of Ed's earlier actions, posing as a cop and questioning the street lady. After the thugs leave, Ed initially drops Simon off and drives away, but then returns and picks him up again. Ed takes Simon to his old office, where Jeremy expresses his displeasure at seeing Ed, but eventually agrees to help him on the condition that Ed never returns. Ed had come to Jeremy for help in getting information on the license plate through Jeremy's traffic police friend, and he successfully obtains the info. As Ed leaves the office, he takes the reserved for campus security board as a memento of his retirement. Ed then takes Simon to a restaurant where he has membership, indicating his connections and influence. Ed teaches Simon about maintaining eye contact, which Simon struggles with, but tries to follow Ed's tips. They head to the address of the Toyota Highlander owner, only to find that the car is in Kurt's junkyard. Despite Simon's ongoing mental struggles, he persists. At the junkyard, Ed gets tired, but they finally spot the Toyota Highlander. However, Ed's fears are confirmed. The license plate is stolen, making it nearly impossible to determine the kidnapper. Simon hears a girl's cries coming from a direction and rushes towards the sound. He stops Kurt from crashing a car and points out to Ed that the girl might be inside, convinced by the imagined cries. However, there's no one in the car, and it's just Simon's delusion. The evil thoughts resurface, mocking Simon's inability to find the girl and hinting at his father's past criticisms. This suggests that Simon's mental illness might be linked to his father's degradation. Detective Glover visits the license plate hub and reviews footage to understand Simon's actions. At home, Simon's sister mentions another job interview, but Simon refuses and walks into his room, where he gets angry seeing his clean and organized room. His sister tries to justify herself, but Simon gets even angrier, saying if she cared so much, she wouldn't have left him alone with their father when she was just 16. Meanwhile, we see Ed, who brings a board from the office, hangs it on the wall, and then turns to wash his face when someone attacks him from the front. Who is this person, and what's their grudge against Ed? After Dee Dee leaves for work, Simon gets up and heads to the kitchen. He looks out the window and sees someone attacking Ed at his house. Simon rushes to Ed's place and sneaks in, grabbing a box and hitting the attacker on the head, diverting his attention and causing him to drop the gun. Simon quickly picks up the gun and points it at the attacker. The attacker warns Simon that if he dies, the kidnapped girl will also die, revealing he is the kidnapper. Simon remains unfazed and shoots the attacker, killing him. The evil voices in Simon's head taunt him about committing murder. Simon then helps the injured Ed into a car, but their neighbors witness the scene and inform Detective Glover. Dee Dee is busy with a customer at her salon when Simon arrives with Ed, who's injured. Dee Dee is concerned but tries to help her brother. As she tends to Ed's wounds, he cries out in pain, catching the customer's attention. Dee Dee quickly distracts the customer with an excuse, but during payment, the customer notices blood on Dee Dee's hand. Meanwhile, the police investigate Ed's house. At the salon, Dee Dee quickly stitches Ed's wounds. Before long, there's a knock at the door. It's the police. Inside, Ed and Simon start checking the kidnapper's mobile contacts. Dee Dee tries to brush the cops off, but they're insistent on entering. Inside, Ed and Simon have vanished, but the police find a blood-stained towel. Ed and Simon board a bus without enough money for tickets. Ed offers his restaurant membership card to the driver. They reach Kurt's junkyard in the morning. Ed hits Kurt, and they tie him up since his number was found on the kidnapper's phone. Simon becomes agitated, but Ed calms him down. Simon notices a wall clock similar to one at Ed's house, and inside, they find passports of girls. This enrages Simon, and he starts seeing evil in Kurt, attacking him. Ed intervenes and restrains Simon, then uses spray on Kurt's eyes. Kurt eventually reveals his partner's address, 5001 Frazo Street, in exchange for a promise not to inform the police. However, Ed betrays Kurt's trust and informs Detective Glover. As they head to the address, the police arrive and arrest Kurt. Simon and Ed reach a house, and Simon starts seeing the evil spirit again, taunting him. Simon becomes frustrated. So Ed clicks a pen, which snaps Simon out of it. Ed hands Simon the pen, instructing him to click it if the visions return. Then, they enter the house to investigate. Simon and Ed investigate the house. They check the storeroom upstairs, which had its light on but was empty. Simon turns off the light. Later, in the living room, a woman appears, but Ed points his gun, and she flees. They suspect she might be the kidnapper's mother. Returning to the storeroom, they find the light on again and discover a hidden door with a tubular lock. Ed uses the pen to unlock it, revealing Anya, the kidnapped girl Simon had envisioned, confirming his intuition was correct. Ed and Simon exit the house, but there is the police, who arrest them. However, Detective Glover acknowledges Simon's efforts, saying, "Good job." Anya is taken to be reunited with her family. Despite being arrested, Ed and Simon exchange a smile, knowing they succeeded in their mission. Despite his mental illness and discouraging visions, Simon proves to be a strong boy because Ed fully supports him. This marks the conclusion of the film. So, dear viewers, how did you like this recap? Do let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting updates. Thank you.